When they laughed, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger that I felt first, it was silence. The kind of silence that wraps around your chest and squeezes, making you question everything you thought you could be. I remember the smirks, the dismissive looks, the small circle of people who thought my dreams were too big for someone like me. They didn't see ambition, they saw arrogance. They didn't hear determination, they heard delusion. I stood there, smiling on the outside, pretending their words didn't sting, but deep down, I was making a promise to myself that their laughter would not be the sound that ended my story, it would be the rhythm that fueled it every night after that moment. I replayed those scenes in my head like a broken record. Their laughter echoed in my mind, sometimes louder than my own thoughts. I started to work differently. I stopped telling people what I was doing, and I started showing results in silence. I woke up earlier, stayed up later, and taught myself things I didn't even know I could learn. Every time I felt tired, I could hear their laughter again, and somehow, it gave me energy. They had no idea they were training me, hardening me, shaping me into someone who could take hits and keep going. The truth is, being laughed at hurts more than being ignored. When people ignore you, you can still pretend they don't notice. But when they laugh, they're telling you to your face that you're not enough. It's personal. And I took it personally. I started writing down goals, small ones at first, ones I could reach in days, not months. I needed to build momentum, to prove to myself that I wasn't the joke they thought I was. One by one, I checked those goals off. Slowly, their voices began to fade in the distance, replaced by the sound of my own progress. Sometimes I wanted to give up. There were nights when the world felt too heavy, when my dreams seemed impossible, and when I questioned if all this pain was even worth it. But then I'd remember that moment, the laughter, the looks, the disbelief. I'd remember how it made me feel, and I knew I couldn't stop there. If I quit, they'd win. If I kept going, I'd win. That simple thought became my anchor every time I started to drift. I learned to find strength in the very thing that once broke me. I realized that revenge doesn't always come in loud victories. Sometimes, it's quiet. It's in the way you rise while they're still stuck in the same place. It's in the way your name starts to mean something while theirs fades into the background. I didn't need to shout or prove anything anymore. My work was becoming the proof. My effort was becoming the answer. The laughter that once haunted me became the background noise to my progress. As the days turned into months, and months into years, I began to change. My confidence wasn't loud, it was steady. I learned to trust myself, to believe that I was capable of things no one else could see yet. I didn't talk about my dreams anymore, I lived them, piece by piece. Every small success felt like a victory over every person who ever doubted me. I started to understand that the best form of revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. And so, when I finally reached that first big milestone, when I finally saw my own reflection not as someone chasing dreams, but as someone living them, I thought back to that day. I thought about the laughter that started it all. I realized it wasn't just mockery, it was motivation in disguise. They thought they were breaking me, but they were building me instead. Their laughter had become my fuel, my fire, my reason to push through every doubt and every obstacle that came after. What they gave me that day wasn't humiliation, it was a challenge, and I accepted it without saying a word. There's a kind of pain that comes from struggling in silence, the kind that no one sees and no one celebrates. I remember the long nights when the world was asleep and I was still awake, chasing something that only I could see. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't easy. There were no lights, no cameras, no applause, just me, my thoughts, and the weight of everything I wanted to become. Every step forward felt like a war against my own doubts, against the whispers of people who said I was wasting my time. But I kept going, because deep inside, I knew that every small effort in the dark would someday build the strength I'd need to shine in the light. I didn't talk much about my struggles back then. People wouldn't have understood. They would have told me to stop dreaming, to be realistic, to settle for something safer. So I stopped sharing, not out of fear, but out of protection, protecting my dream from the noise of others. My silence became my strategy. While others spent their energy talking about what they wanted to do, I spent mine doing it. There's a certain power in quiet persistence, in doing the work that no one claps for. The world only sees the results, but they never see the endless practice, The rejection, the exhaustion, the tears you hide so no one can use them against you. Sometimes I would stare at my reflection and wonder if all this effort would ever mean anything. I would feel invisible, like my work didn't matter, like my progress wasn't real. But then I'd remind myself that silence doesn't mean failure. It means preparation. Every unseen effort was laying the foundation for something bigger. I learned that the most beautiful transformations happen away from the spotlight, in solitude, where no one is watching. That's where discipline grows. That's where character is built. That's where you learn who you really are when no one is cheering for you. There were days when I had nothing left to give. My body was tired, my mind was heavy, and my heart was breaking under the weight of unmet expectations. But I kept pushing because the alternative, giving up, felt worse than the struggle itself. I couldn't go back to being that person who was laughed at, who was doubted. I wanted to rise, not just to prove them wrong, but to prove to myself that I was capable of enduring, surviving, and creating something out of the chaos. I started to find a strange comfort in the struggle. The silence that once felt lonely began to feel powerful. It became my secret space to grow, my hidden training ground. Every little success, no matter how small, became a spark of hope. When no one was around to notice, I would smile to myself, knowing that I was one step closer. I didn't need validation anymore. The satisfaction of knowing I was moving forward, even if no one else could see it, was enough. It's strange how the world ignores you when you're struggling, but celebrates you when you've already won. No one claps for the climb, they only cheer at the summit. But I learned to clap for myself in the dark, to celebrate quiet victories that no one else understood. As time passed, the struggle became less about pain and more about purpose. The sleepless nights turned into lessons, the failures turned into guidance, and the silence turned into strength. I realized that this phase of unseen sacrifice wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. It was shaping me into the kind of person who could handle success without losing humility. It was teaching me to rely on myself, to believe in my own timing, to understand that growth isn't instant, it's gradual and often invisible. Every tear, every setback, every moment of doubt was secretly building resilience inside me. I started to notice that the same people who once doubted me were still talking, still laughing, still wasting energy on noise, while I had learned to move in silence. Their words no longer had the power to hurt me, because I had discovered something more powerful than their opinions. I had found purpose in my pain. The silence that once felt empty was now full of meaning. Every quiet morning, every lonely night, every unseen sacrifice was proof that I was becoming someone stronger, someone ready. And even though no one could see it yet, I knew that my time was coming. Doubt is a strange thing. It starts small, like a whisper in the back of your mind, and then it grows louder when the world begins to echo it back at you. When others doubt you, it's easy to start doubting yourself too. I remember when people looked at me and couldn't see potential, they only saw limits. They questioned my choices, mocked my confidence, and told me I was chasing something impossible. Their words weren't always harsh, they were sometimes disguised as advice, as concern, but beneath their tone was disbelief. They didn't think I had what it took to make it, and that disbelief burned itself into my memory. At first, I tried to fight it. I tried to convince people, to explain my dreams, to make them understand what I saw in my mind. But the more I explained, the more they laughed, and the more I realized that some people will never see your vision until it's complete. So, I stopped talking. I stopped trying to justify my goals to those who had already decided I would fail. Instead, I turned every doubt into fuel. Every time someone told me I couldn't, I heard it as a challenge. Every doubt became a brick, and I started building my foundation with them. There's something powerful about being underestimated. It hurts, yes, but it also gives you the freedom to work without pressure. No one expects you to win, so you can focus on becoming unstoppable. I used their doubt as motivation. When they thought I wasn't working hard enough, I was working harder than ever. When they assumed I had given up, I was just getting started. Their disbelief didn't weaken me, it sharpened me. I started to realize that their doubt wasn't a reflection of my ability, it was a reflection of their own limitations. They couldn't imagine me succeeding because they couldn't imagine themselves doing what I was trying to do. There were times when the noise got loud, when the negativity felt too heavy. People can be cruel without even realizing it. They'd make jokes, throw comments, and pretend it was all harmless fun. But words have power, and I felt their weight every time I went home after a long day, pretending not to care. Yet somehow, even when I felt small, something inside me refused to break. I told myself that if they didn't believe in me, then I would believe for both of us. Their laughter became my alarm clock. Their disbelief became my motivation. Their doubt became the energy that kept me moving when everything else told me to stop. It's funny how doubt from others can reveal your own strength. You don't realize how resilient you are until someone tells you that you're not. You don't realize how much you want something until people tell you that you'll never have it. I started to see their doubt as a gift, unwanted, but valuable. It taught me persistence. It taught me patience. It taught me how to keep going when the applause was silent and the support was nowhere to be found. Their words pushed me to train harder, to learn more, to become better than I ever imagined I could be. Every time they doubted me, I silently thanked them, because they were unknowingly giving me the strength I needed. As I moved forward, I began to see a pattern. The same people who doubted me the most were often the ones who had given up on their own dreams. Their disbelief wasn't really about me, it was about them. They couldn't see greatness in others because they had stopped looking for it in themselves. That realization freed me. I no longer took their words personally. I learned to smile at their skepticism, to let their doubt roll off me like rain on glass. I didn't need them to see it, I just needed to keep going until the results spoke for themselves, and slowly, things began to change. The progress was small at first, quiet, almost invisible, but it was there. Opportunities began to appear, and with each step forward, the laughter grew quieter. The same people who once questioned me started watching me differently. I could see curiosity replacing mockery, silence replacing sarcasm. Their doubt, which once felt like a weight, had become the very reason I rose higher. I didn't need to say, "I told you so." I just needed to keep walking toward the future they said I couldn't reach, carrying every ounce of doubt they threw at me and turning it into unstoppable drive. There's a moment in every dreamer's journey when everything changes, when all the quiet work, the endless sacrifices, and the sleepless nights finally lead to something real. For me, that moment came like a wave I didn't see coming. One day, I was still the person people overlooked, and the next, I was standing in front of cameras, lights flashing, microphones in my face, realizing that I had become the story. The very same people who once laughed at me were now watching me through their screens, hearing my name being spoken on national television. It didn't happen overnight, but when it did, it felt like every second of struggle had led me exactly to that point. I remember that morning clearly. My hands were shaking, my heart racing as the crew prepared for the interview. The air felt heavy, not with fear, but with realization. This was what I had been fighting for all along, not fame, not recognition, but validation that my journey had meant something. The lights were bright, and for the first time, I wasn't the invisible one in the room. I was the one being seen, being heard, being respected. Every voice that once told me I'd never make it was drowned out by the sound of my own voice, speaking with confidence and calmness, telling my story to the world. As the cameras rolled, memories flooded my mind. The times I cried in silence, the failures no one knew about, the doubts that almost broke me. I could see flashes of every rejection, every night I wanted to quit but didn't. All of it played in my head as I spoke, but this time, the pain didn't hurt, it fueled me. The world was finally listening, and I wanted them to know that I didn't get here because it was easy. I got here because I refused to stop when everyone else thought I should. I had turned every no into motivation, every setback into a stepping stone, and now, that persistence had brought me to this moment. It was strange seeing my reflection on the TV screen later that night. I sat there in silence, just watching. I wasn't sure how to feel: proud, emotional, overwhelmed, all of it at once. I thought about the people who once called me foolish, the ones who whispered that I'd never go far. I wondered if they were watching too. Maybe they were sitting somewhere, realizing that the person they doubted had done exactly what they said was impossible. I didn't want revenge in that moment. I just felt peace. Because I didn't have to prove them wrong anymore. Life had done that for me. The messages started pouring in after the interview aired. People who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly remembered my name. They congratulated me, told me they'd always believed in me, pretending to forget the times they laughed. But I remembered. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. I remembered every moment that brought me here. The silence, the doubt, the work no one saw. It all made sense now. The recognition was just the surface of something much deeper. What mattered most wasn't being seen by the world. It was that I finally saw myself the way I always wanted to be seen. There's something incredibly powerful about watching your dream unfold in front of you. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause at first. It comes with a quiet realization that you've become the version of yourself that you once prayed for. Standing on that national stage wasn't just about success, it was about survival. It was proof that every hard moment was worth it. I had learned to fight without bitterness, to rise without shouting, to succeed without seeking validation. I didn't need to remind anyone of their laughter. The screen did it for me. The funny thing about success is how it changes the silence around you. When you're struggling, the silence feels like loneliness. But when you make it, that same silence becomes power. People stop laughing, stop doubting, stop questioning. Suddenly, everyone listens, everyone watches. Everyone wants to know your story. And while the world calls it luck or timing, you know the truth. It was the years of work that no one saw, the resilience that no one gave you credit for, the belief that refused to die no matter how many times others tried to bury it. That's what brought you here, to this exact moment where everything that once hurt now makes sense. When I finally came face to face with the same people who once mocked me, it felt like stepping into a memory I had already lived 100 times in my head. Their faces were the same, their voices carried the same tone, but everything else had changed, especially me. I wasn't the same person they used to laugh at. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I had outgrown their opinions, their judgment, and their version of who they thought I was. Still, standing there, looking at them, I could see flashes of the past, the smirks, the dismissive looks, the whispered jokes behind my back. It all came rushing back, but instead of anger, I felt something unexpected, calm. They didn't know how to act. Some smiled awkwardly, pretending they hadn't doubted me. Others avoided eye contact, as if by ignoring me, they could erase what they had said. A few even tried to take credit for my journey, reminding me of small things they did long ago, twisting the story so that it sounded like they had supported me all along. I didn't call them out. I didn't need to. The truth was already visible in the silence between us. Success has a way of speaking louder than any argument ever could. I didn't need to remind them of their laughter because now they were the ones struggling to find words. What surprised me most was how small their opinions felt now. Back then, their words used to cut deep. They could ruin my entire day, shake my confidence, make me question my worth. But now, standing there, I realized how much power I had once given them. Their laughter had been loud only because I had allowed it to echo in my head. Now, I saw them clearly, not as giants whose opinions mattered, but as people who simply couldn't see what I saw in myself. I almost felt sorry for them, not out of pity, but out of understanding. They were trapped in their own disbelief, unable to imagine that someone like me could rise beyond the limits they had set. As I spoke to them, I noticed the shift in their tone. There was hesitation now, a kind of respect mixed with discomfort. They asked questions they never would have asked before about my work, my plans, my future. I could see curiosity in their eyes, but also something else, regret. Maybe it was regret for doubting me, or maybe it was regret for never chasing their own dreams. Whatever it was, it didn't matter anymore. I answered politely, not to impress them, but because I no longer needed to defend who I was. My story was already written in front of them, line by line. Through every achievement they once said I couldn't have, what they didn't realize was that their laughter had shaped me far more than their approval ever could. They thought they were breaking me down, but in reality, they were pushing me toward becoming the version of myself that could stand here today without bitterness. I didn't want to make them feel small, even though part of me once dreamed of that moment, the revenge, the satisfaction of seeing disbelief on their faces. But when it finally happened, I understood that true victory doesn't come from humiliating those who doubted you. It comes from realizing you no longer need their validation at all. There was one moment that stood out to me, a quiet one. One of them, someone who used to laugh the loudest, came up to me after everyone else had left. Their voice was softer now, their eyes more tired. They said they were proud of me. I could tell it wasn't easy for them to say, but it was genuine. I nodded, smiled, and thanked them. I didn't bring up the past. I didn't remind them of what they once said. In that moment, I understood that forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. I had carried their words for so long, using them as fuel, and now it was time to let them go. Walking away that day felt like closing a chapter one had been reading for years. I had faced the people who once laughed at my dreams, and instead of anger, I felt peace. They no longer had the power to define me, and I no longer needed to prove anything. The laughter that once hurt me had transformed into something else entirely, a memory of where I came from, a reminder of how far I'd come. As I left, I realized that revenge isn't about making others feel what you felt. It's about showing them, through your calm success, that you never needed their permission to rise. There's a quiet power in transformation. The kind that doesn't happen overnight, but builds slowly, piece by piece, through every trial, every doubt, every fall you learn to rise from. I used to think success would feel like fireworks, like a loud celebration that would announce to the world that I'd finally made it. But when it happened, it wasn't loud at all. It was silent, steady, and deeply personal. The transformation wasn't just about the recognition, the achievements, or being on national TV. It was about becoming someone I never thought I could be. The laughter that once echoed in my ears had faded into the background, replaced by something stronger. Belief being underestimated had once been my biggest weakness. It used to crush me when people didn't take me seriously, when they looked at me with disbelief or pity. But now it had become my greatest advantage. I realized that being underestimated gave me the freedom to build quietly, to grow without expectation, to surprise everyone, including myself, when the time was right. The person I was before would have wanted to shout my success from the rooftops, to show everyone what I had achieved. But the person I had become didn't need to. My peace had replaced my need for validation. My confidence no longer depended on the opinions of those who once doubted me. Every setback, every rejection, every moment of pain had carved something inside me that couldn't be taken away. I learned to see value in struggle, to understand that every difficult season had prepared me for something greater. When I looked back, I realized that if those people hadn't laughed, if life hadn't tested me so harshly, I might never have discovered the strength I now carried. The transformation wasn't in what I gained, it was in what I shed. I shed the need to prove, the fear of failing, the constant craving for acceptance. I had finally learned that the only person I needed to impress was myself. People often think transformation happens when the world starts noticing you, but it begins long before that. In the unseen moments when you choose to keep going despite everything telling you to stop. It happens when you start believing in yourself even when no one else does. I used to think success was about proving people wrong, but I learned that real success is about proving yourself right. I stopped chasing revenge and started chasing purpose. I stopped caring about who was watching and focused only on who I was becoming. That shift changed everything. It turned pain into power, doubt into drive, and rejection into resilience. When I looked around at the people who once mocked me, I realized they hadn't changed much. They were still in the same place, still talking, still judging others for dreaming too big. But I was no longer affected by it. Their opinions had lost their weight because my reality had outgrown their perception. I no longer felt anger or pride, just distance. It was as if I had crossed an invisible line that separated the old version of me from the new one. The person who once cared too much about what others thought had disappeared. In their place stood someone grounded, confident, and free. Transformation doesn't come from what you achieve, it comes from what you survive. I had survived laughter, doubt, rejection, and fear. I had survived long nights of questioning my worth and mornings of pushing through exhaustion. Each of those moments added a layer of strength to who I was becoming. I didn't realize it at the time, but every hardship was preparing me for the moment when I'd no longer be defined by anyone else's opinion. The journey had burned away everything unnecessary, ego, insecurity, fear, and left behind something pure, resilience. Now, when I walk into a room, I no longer carry the weight of needing to be understood. I walk with quiet certainty, knowing that I am the product of every storm I refuse to surrender to. People see the success, the recognition, the spotlight, But what they don't see is the years of becoming, the transformation that took place in silence. That's the part that matters most. The applause fades, the headlines change, but the strength you build from within stays. I became unforgettable not because the world finally noticed me, but because I finally became the version of myself that I had always believed I could be.